This story is a work of fiction, a dramatized emotional narrative inspired by the pressures of fame, told in my voice for storytelling purposes. There are moments in life when the world doesn't stop, even when your body does. I found out on a Tuesday morning, alone in a quiet hotel bathroom, the kind with marble sinks and mirrors that make you look like someone else. The city outside was already awake, horns blaring, schedules moving forward without me. I remember staring at the test in my hand, waiting for it to make sense, waiting for the universe to explain itself. It didn't. 2 lines. Clear. Unmistakable. Pregnant. I sat down on the edge of the tub because my legs gave out before my mind could catch up. My heart raced, not with joy or fear alone, but with disbelief. I was in the middle of rehearsals, in the middle of negotiations, in the middle of a life that never paused long enough for questions like this. I told myself to breathe. Then I noticed something else in the doctor's voice later that day. A pause. A hesitation. The kind that never brings good news. "Whitney," she said softly, "there are 2 heartbeats. Twins." The word echoed in my head like a song I'd never rehearsed for. I smiled at first. Then the smile faded. Because almost immediately, another thought followed, sharp, unavoidable, terrifying in its simplicity. I didn't know who the father was. Not because I was careless. Not because I was reckless. But because my life had become a blur of long nights, distance, broken promises, and relationships that lived in shadows instead of daylight. Fame doesn't just give you attention. It fractures time. It confuses intimacy. It makes memory unreliable. I press my hand against my stomach, still flat, still silent, already carrying more weight than anyone could see. 2 lives growing inside me. 2 secrets. And a truth that could destroy everything if it came out the wrong way. I knew then that this wasn't just about motherhood. It was about identity, control, survival. Because the world didn't love complicated women. And it certainly didn't forgive uncertainty. As I stood up to leave that office, sunglasses pulled low, name heavy on my shoulders, one thought repeated itself louder than any crowd I'd ever faced. If this story got out, it wouldn't belong to me anymore. And somehow, I would have to decide whether to protect my children or the woman the world thought I was. And that choice would change everything. I learned very quickly that silence doesn't mean safety. After the doctor's office, I didn't go back to rehearsal. I told my assistant I had a migraine, the kind no one questions when you've been living under lights and expectations for too long. The truth was heavier than pain. It sat in my chest, pressing down with every breath, demanding attention I wasn't ready to give. 2 heartbeats. The words followed me into the Blacktown car, into the hotel elevator, into the quiet of my suite where the curtains were drawn tight against the afternoon sun. I kicked off my heels and walked barefoot across the carpet, hand instinctively resting on my stomach, as if the babies could already feel me trying to protect them. Twins. I laughed once, softly, then stopped myself. Nothing about this was funny. Nothing about it was simple. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the small dining table by the window. From the outside, anyone looking up would have seen luxury, height, distance, control. But inside, I felt stripped of all 3. My calendar lay open beside me. Tour dates, interviews, charity events, meetings with people who smiled too much and listened too little. There was no space for uncertainty. No space for a woman who didn't have answers. And that was the problem. I closed my eyes and tried to rewind the last year of my life. Tried to separate love from loneliness, comfort from confusion. There had been relationships that felt real in the moment and hollow the second the door closed behind them. Men who promised consistency but disappeared into their own chaos. Moments I thought meant something more than they did. I wasn't reckless, but I was human. And now 2 lives were growing inside me, tied to a truth I couldn't clearly name. My phone buzzed on the table. I flinched before I even looked. It was my manager. "Whitney, where are you?" he asked, already tense. "They're waiting." I needed air, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I'll be back tomorrow." A pause. Everything okay? I stared out at the city. I don't know yet. He sighed. You can't disappear right now. There are rumors already. You've been tired. Emotional. People notice. People always noticed. I'll handle it, I said, ending the call before he could push further. I stood and walked to the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked the same as always, carefully composed, beautiful in a way the world felt entitled to. But I saw the cracks already forming beneath the surface. I saw fear. I saw resolve. I saw a future splitting into paths I never planned to walk. I pressed my palm flat against my stomach again. I've got you, I whispered. Even if I don't know how yet. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, questions rushed in. How long could I hide this? Who would I tell first? What would happen when the press found out? And the most dangerous question of all, did I even have the right to keep the secret? The industry didn't treat pregnancy like a miracle. It treated it like a liability. By morning, my body ached with exhaustion. I dressed slowly, choosing loose clothes, dark colors, armor. I slipped on sunglasses before stepping into the hallway, already preparing myself for the performance of being fine. At rehearsal, everything felt louder, brighter, too close. I could hear whispers when I walked past. Not about the pregnancy, no one knew yet, but about me. About my energy, my focus, my stability. She's distracted, someone muttered when they thought I couldn't hear. If only they knew. During a break, I sat alone in the corner of the studio, while the dancers laughed nearby. My choreographer approached me carefully, like I might shatter. You sure you're okay? She asked. I nodded. Just tired. She hesitated. You know, if there's something you need to tell us. I said I'm fine. I cut in sharper than I meant to. She backed away, wounded. Guilt washed over me immediately, but fear drowned it out. Every word felt dangerous now. Every glance, like a threat. I was carrying a secret that could end my career before it even showed on my body. As rehearsal ended, my assistant handed me a folded note. This was left for you, she said. No name. My stomach tightened. I opened it slowly. Inside, written in neat, deliberate handwriting, were words that made my blood run cold. Be careful, Whitney. Not all secrets stay yours. I looked up, heart pounding, scanning the room. Someone already knew. And suddenly, the question wasn't if this would come out. It was who would expose it first. The note stayed folded in my pocket all night, like a small blade pressed against my skin. I didn't show it to anyone. I didn't photograph it. I didn't even throw it away. I needed to feel it there, needed the reminder that this wasn't paranoia anymore. Someone knew, or thought they knew enough to scare me. Fear has a sound. That night, it was the hum of the air conditioner in my hotel room, steady and relentless, like time refusing to slow down for my panic. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one hand resting over my stomach, the other clutching the sheet. 2 heartbeats. One secret too big to carry alone. By morning, the nausea hit me hard. Not just physical, emotional. Every movement felt amplified. Every smell too sharp. I canceled interviews, blamed exhaustion again. It was becoming my favorite lie, because it was close enough to the truth to pass. At rehearsal, I watched people instead of listening to them. Who avoided my eyes. Who lingered too long. Who whispered and stopped when I turned. The room felt different now, like I was standing in the center of a quiet conspiracy. My manager cornered me during a break. You're pulling away, he said. This isn't like you. I forced a smile. I'm allowed to have off days. Not this many, he replied gently, which somehow made it worse. Is there something I should know? The words rose to my throat, heavy and desperate. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to hear someone else say it out loud, so I could believe it was real. But trust felt dangerous now. Trust felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. No, I said. There's nothing. He studied me for a long moment. If that's not true, it's going to hurt you later. I nodded, non-committal, and walked away before he could ask again. Later that afternoon, I met with my doctor privately. She confirmed what my body already knew. Everything was progressing quickly. Too quickly. Twins didn't wait for anyone to be ready. You need to reduce stress, she said firmly. And you'll need support. I almost laughed. Support from who? As I left the clinic, I noticed a man leaning against a parked car across the street. He wasn't paparazzi. No camera. No obvious interest. Just watching. When our eyes met, he didn't look away. My pulse spiked. By the time I reached my car, he was gone. That evening, my assistant told me someone had called the office asking questions. Vague ones. About my schedule. About changes. About cancellations. They didn't leave a name, she said. But it felt intentional. I nodded slowly. If they call again, tell me. I returned to my room and locked the door behind me. For the first time since the test, I cried. Not quietly, not gracefully. I cried like someone who finally understands that strength doesn't mean invincibility, that carrying life doesn't make you fearless. It makes you vulnerable in ways the world doesn't forgive. I thought about the men who could be the father. Not with judgment, with sadness. None of them were present enough to share this moment. None of them felt safe enough to trust with the truth. And that realization hurt more than the uncertainty itself. The phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at it until it stopped. Then it rang again. Against my better judgment, I answered. Whitney, a male voice said, calm and confident. You don't know me, but I know you. My chest tightened. Who is this? Someone who wants to help, he replied. Before things get complicated. I stood slowly, walking to the window. You've already complicated things. A soft chuckle. You're pregnant, he said. The room tilted. How? My voice broke. It doesn't matter how, he interrupted. What matters is that this story won't stay quiet for long. People are asking questions. People with power. I swallowed hard. What do you want? To protect you, he said smoothly. But protection has a price. I closed my eyes. I'm listening. There are narratives forming, he continued. If you don't control them, they'll control you. I can help manage that. Shape it. Decide what the public hears. And if I don't? I asked. A pause. Long enough to feel deliberate. Then you'll be reacting instead of leading, he said. And Whitney reaction is where women like you get destroyed. The call ended. I stood there shaking, phone still pressed to my ear, the city lights blurring beyond the glass. Someone knew. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting for me to break. And as I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, one terrifying thought cut through everything else. If I didn't choose who to trust soon, someone else would choose for me. And they wouldn't choose kindness. Trust became a calculation after that call. Not a feeling. Not an instinct. A math problem with too many unknowns and consequences I couldn't afford to misjudge. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside my door felt intentional. Every shadow on the wall looked like it belonged to someone watching. By morning, I had memorized the cracks in the ceiling and learned something terrifying about myself. I could function even when fear became background noise. That scared me more than the threats. At rehearsal, I was quieter than usual, observing, listening between words. When people laughed, I wondered why. When conversation stopped as I approached, I wondered what they'd been saying. The note, the call, the man by the car. They had rewired the way I saw everything. Marla noticed first. You okay? She whispered as we sat side by side during a break. I hesitated. My instinct was to deflect, but something in her eyes felt steady, familiar, human. I lowered my voice. Have you heard anything strange? I asked. She frowned. About what? About me. She paused. People always talk, Whit. This feels different, I said. She studied me for a moment longer, then leaned in. There's a rumor going around, she admitted. Nothing solid, just speculation. My chest tightened. About what? She hesitated. About why you've been pulling back. Why dates are being moved. I nodded slowly. And someone said they heard it's medical, she said carefully. But no one knows details. Medical. That word could stretch to cover anything, or expose everything. Who said it? I asked. Marla shook her head. It came through production. I couldn't trace it. Neither could I. Later that afternoon, I met with my manager again. He'd asked for lunch, neutral territory. A quiet restaurant with too much light and not enough privacy. You're being watched, he said after we ordered, voice low. I stiffened. You too. He nodded. Not in a good way. I stared at my glass of water. How bad? Bad enough that I'm being asked questions I don't have answers to, he said. People from the label. From PR. From places that don't usually get involved this early. My fingers tightened around the napkin. About what? He leaned forward. Whitney, are you sick? The word landed hard. No, I said quickly. I'm not sick. Relief flickered across his face, but suspicion followed. Then help me help you. What's going on? I opened my mouth and closed it. I'm handling something personal, I said finally. And I need time. Time was the one thing no one ever gave me. He sighed. Time invites speculation. So does silence, I replied. We paid and left separately. That evening I had my first ultrasound. The room was dim, quiet, sacred. When the technician turned the screen toward me, I forgot everything else, the rumors, the threats, the noise. 2 shapes. 2 flickering heartbeats. I felt tears slide down my temples into my hair. They're strong, she said softly. So was the love I felt in that moment. Immediate. Protective. Terrifying. I walked out of the clinic knowing one thing with absolute clarity. I would do anything to keep them safe. Anything. When I returned to my hotel, there was an envelope waiting at the front desk. No return address. My name written carefully, deliberately. My stomach dropped. I took it upstairs, locked the door, and sat on the bed before opening it. Inside was a single photograph. Me. Leaving the clinic. Hand on my stomach. Taken from across the street. I stared at it until the room blurred. Taped to the back was a typed note. We can help you tell the right story. Or we can tell it for you. My breath came shallow. This wasn't gossip anymore. This wasn't rumor. This was surveillance. My phone buzzed immediately after. Unknown number. I didn't hesitate this time. You're crossing a line, I said the moment I answered. A familiar voice replied. Calm. Controlled. Lines are subjective. You followed me, I said. We observed, he corrected. Because you didn't respond. I haven't agreed to anything. You don't need to, he said. Your situation speaks for itself. Anger flared. You think this gives you power over me? I think it gives us leverage, he replied. Which is different. I stood and paced. What do you want? A meeting, he said. In person. Tomorrow night. No, I said instantly. Then the conversation widens, he replied. And you lose control. I stopped pacing. Where? He gave me an address. Not a studio. Not an office. A private residence. My pulse pounded. And if I don't show, then the next envelope won't be so discreet. The line went dead. I dropped the phone and sank onto the bed, the photograph still clutched in my hand. Someone knew where I went. Someone knew my body. Someone knew my secret. And they were no longer asking. As I stared at the image of myself, unaware, exposed, vulnerable, one realization settled in my bones with terrifying certainty. This wasn't about scandal. It was about control. And tomorrow night, I would either confront it or let it own me. I told myself not to go. I stood in front of the mirror that night repeating it like a prayer. Don't go. Cancel. Call security. Call my lawyer. Call anyone. But every option led to the same dead end. The photograph. The note. The certainty that if I didn't face this head-on, someone else would decide how and when my truth exploded. So I went. The address led me to a quiet residential street, the kind where people believe nothing bad ever happens because the lawns are trimmed and the lights are warm. I arrived alone. No entourage. No security. I wore a long coat and pulled my hair back, trying to look like a woman with control instead of a woman walking into a trap. The house was large, understated, expensive in a way that didn't need to announce itself. A man opened the door before I could knock. "Whitney," he said calmly, as if we were old friends. "Thank you for coming." I recognized his voice immediately. He stepped aside and let me in. The living room was immaculate. Too immaculate. No family photos. No personal clutter. Just clean lines, leather furniture, and the quiet hum of something powerful operating behind the scenes. "I won't sit," I said. He smiled. "Of course not." Another man emerged from the hallway. Older. Sharper eyes. He didn't bother pretending this was about help. "We represent interests," he said. "Media, contracts, distribution." I crossed my arms, my stomach tightening beneath the coat. "You represent fear." "We represent reality," he replied. The first man gestured to a folder on the table. "You're pregnant. With twins. And there's uncertainty surrounding the father." I swallowed hard. Hearing it said so plainly felt like being undressed. "That information is private," I said. He tilted his head. "Not for long." Anger surged through me. "You followed me. You invaded my life. And now we're offering you protection," the older man said. "From the worst versions of this story." I laughed bitterly. "By threatening me?" "By managing the narrative," he corrected. "We've done it before. Successfully." I stared at the folder. "What's in there?" "Scenarios," he said. "Paths forward." I opened it despite myself. Draft statements. Media strategies. Controlled leaks. Even potential candidates subtly floated as possible fathers. Men with clean reputations, convenient timelines, and something to gain from association. My hands shook. "You're offering me a lie," I said. "We're offering you survival," the older man replied. "The truth is messy. The truth invites judgment. And the truth will not protect your children." That word hit me like a punch. Children. "Don't you dare use them," I snapped. The first man's voice softened. "Whitney, the world doesn't forgive uncertainty in women like you. They'll call you irresponsible, unstable, unfit." I took a step back. "You don't get to decide what kind of mother I'll be." "No," he said. "But we can decide what kind of story the world hears." Silence fell between us, thick and dangerous. "And if I refuse?" I asked. The older man didn't hesitate. "Then the photo becomes public. Then the questions start. Then people dig. And they won't stop at paternity." I felt my breath catch. "You're blackmailing me," he shrugged. "We prefer the term leverage." I looked at them, really looked. Two men who saw my body as a liability, my motherhood as a problem to solve, my life as a chessboard. "I won't lie," I said quietly. The first man's expression hardened. "Then you're choosing chaos." "I'm choosing truth," I replied. "And truth has consequences," the older man said. "Especially for women who refuse to stay quiet." Something inside me snapped, not loudly, but completely. "You think I'm afraid of judgment?" I asked. "I've lived under it my entire life." They exchanged a glance. "I'm afraid of you," I continued. "I'm afraid of what happens when powerful people decide a woman's body is public property." The first man stepped closer. "Then let us protect you from worse." I backed toward the door. "This ends now." He sighed. "It doesn't." I turned and left before they could say more, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The night air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside, shaking, furious, determined. I barely made it to my car before my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "You shouldn't have walked away," the older man said calmly. "I said no," I replied. "Then understand this," he said. "You're not the only one who knows parts of this story now." A chill ran through me. "Who else?" He paused just long enough. "Someone very close to you." The line went dead. I stood there in the dark, hand gripping the car door, fear crawling up my spine. Someone close. My mind raced. Manager, assistant, friend, singer, staff. Trust fractured into 1,000 sharp pieces. As I drove away, one thought echoed louder than all the others. If they were right, then the danger wasn't outside anymore.
It was already inside my life.
I didn't go back to the hotel. The idea of closed doors and familiar hallways suddenly felt dangerous. If someone close to me knew, if someone I trusted had decided my life was currency, then privacy was an illusion I couldn't afford. I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, the city lights smearing into long streaks through my windshield as my thoughts collided with each other. Someone close. The words replayed again and again. I pulled into a quiet parking structure and cut the engine. My hands trembled as I rested them against the steering wheel, my breath shallow and uneven. Fear had changed shape. It wasn't loud anymore. It was precise. I took out my phone and scrolled through contacts, stopping and starting, interrogating every name with the same brutal question. Would you sell me to protect yourself? I called Marla first. She answered on the second ring. Whit, where are you? I asked. At home, she said. What's wrong? I listened for hesitation, for calculation. There was none, just concern. I need to see you, I said. Now. Yes. I'll come to you. No, I replied too quickly. I'll come to you. Another pause. Then, okay. Be careful. I drove straight there. Her apartment was small, warm, real. The kind of place that felt lived in. She opened the door and pulled me into a hug before I could say a word. I felt my chest loosen just enough to breathe. I'm scared, I whispered into her shoulder. She didn't ask why. She just held me. We sat at her kitchen table, coffee untouched between us. I told her everything. The pregnancy, the twins, the photograph, the men, the threats. I watched her face as I spoke, watched for cracks. When I finished, she covered her mouth with her hand. Oh my God, she breathed. Whitney, you didn't tell anyone, I said carefully. Not a question. No, she said immediately. I swear, I would never. I believed her. Instinctively. Completely. Someone is leaking information, I said. They said someone close. Her eyes hardened. Then they're lying to scare you. Or they're telling the truth to control you. Which is worse? Both. I left her place calmer than when I arrived, but more focused. Fear without direction paralyzes. Fear with clarity becomes resolve. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called my lawyer, then my doctor, then my manager. I told him we needed a meeting today. No delays. No excuses. We met in a conference room at the labels office, all glass and steel, designed to make emotions feel inappropriate. He looked exhausted. So did I. They threatened me, I said without preamble. With photos. With leaks. His face went pale. Who? I don't know, I replied. But they claimed to have inside access. He exhaled slowly. Whitney, there have been conversations. I leaned forward. About me. About risk, he said carefully. About exposure. And, did you participate? I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation was everything. You didn't take the photos, I said. But you didn't stop them either. His shoulders slumped. I was trying to protect you. By negotiating my silence. By preventing chaos. I stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly against the floor. You let them believe they could control me. His voice cracked. They came to me first. They said they already had proof. And you believe them, I said. I believe this industry doesn't forgive uncertainty, he replied. Especially not from women. I laughed bitterly. So you decided to manage me. He reached for me. Whitney. Don't, I snapped. You don't get to touch me right now. I walked out before he could say more. Outside, my phone exploded with notifications. A blog post. Unverified. Vague. Sources close to the singer suggest major personal news may soon surface. They were testing the water. I sat in my car, heart racing, and made one final call. The network. I'll do the interview, I said. Live. Unedited. There was a pause. Are you sure? No, I replied. But I'm ready. That night, I sat alone in my hotel room, finally back behind locked doors, one hand on my stomach, the other gripping the edge of the bed. I won't let them tell your story, I whispered to the twins. Not theirs. Not anyone's.
My phone buzzed one last time.
Unknown number. A text message this time. You think going public will save you? It won't. Tomorrow changes everything. I stared at the screen, then turned it face down. Tomorrow would change everything. But not the way they thought. Because for the first time since those 2 lines appeared on a test in a marble bathroom, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing. And the world was about to hear the truth, on my terms. The studio was too quiet before we went live. That kind of quiet, the one that vibrates in your bones, where every breath feels amplified, and every thought sounds louder than it should. I sat in the makeup chair, lights hovering inches from my face, watching my reflection take shape. Calm eyes. Steady hands. A woman the world believed it already knew. But they didn't know this version of me. Not yet. 5 minutes. My lawyer stood nearby, arms crossed, jaw tight. You don't have to say everything, she reminded me softly. Just enough. I nodded, though we both knew I wouldn't do that. Because just enough was how other people had controlled my life for years. When the producer signaled, I stood and walked onto the set. The applause came automatically, trained, polite, expectant. I sat across from the host, legs crossed, shoulders relaxed. From the outside, it probably looked like any other interview. Inside, my heart beat for 3. The red light blinked on. Whitney, the host began, voice gentle. There's been a lot of speculation lately. You've canceled appearances, rumors are circulating, and sources close to you say something big is coming. What's going on? I smiled faintly. I've learned something about rumors, I said. They grow fastest when people think you're afraid of the truth. A ripple moved through the audience. I inhaled slowly, deliberately. I'm pregnant, I said. The room froze. And I'm carrying twins.
Gasps.
Hands over mouths. A collective intake of breath that sounded like shock, judgment, curiosity, all at once. I didn't rush. I didn't look away. I didn't plan this moment for cameras, I continued. I planned it for honesty. The host shifted, visibly stunned. There's been discussion, he said carefully, about uncertainty. About the father. I nodded.
Yes, there has.
My lawyer stiffened. So, I want to say this clearly, I said, looking directly into the camera. My children are not a scandal. They are not leverage. They are not a story for anyone else to control. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then stronger. I've been threatened, I continued calmly, by people who thought fear would make me manageable. People who believed that if I didn't fit neatly into their narrative, they could rewrite me. The host's eyes widened. You're saying... I'm saying that powerful people try to decide what kind of woman I'm allowed to be, I said. And what kind of mother? Silence. I placed my hand gently over my stomach. I don't owe the world certainty about my personal life, I said. I owe my children's safety.
Dignity.
Love. My voice didn't break.
It didn't need to.
I know who I am, I continued. I know the life I've lived. And I know that motherhood doesn't require perfection. It requires courage. The applause this time was louder, uncontrolled. The host tried to regain footing. Some critics may say this could impact your career. I smiled, truly smiled. Then they never understood my career, I replied. Because my voice was never about image. It was about truth. When the light clicked off, the room erupted. Not just applause, movement, voices. Energy. Something had shifted. Backstage, my phone was already lighting up. Messages from fans. From women. From mothers. From people who had felt erased, managed, reduced. The men who had threatened me tried to call. I didn't answer. By morning, the narrative had changed. Articles didn't ask who the father was. They asked why anyone thought it was their business. The leaked photo lost its power once the truth stood in full light. Threats dissolve when exposed. Control fails when confronted. Some relationships didn't survive that interview. My manager resigned weeks later. Certain doors closed quietly. Others opened. More importantly, I slept that night for the first time in weeks. Not because everything was solved, but because nothing was hidden anymore. I stood by the window of my hotel room, city glowing below, hand resting on the gentle curve of my body. 2 heartbeats.
Strong. Steady.
I chose you, I whispered. Every time. This story wasn't about scandal. It was about a woman refusing to be owned. About choosing truth over fear. About understanding that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say, "This is my life, and I will not be silenced." Reflection. This story is about control, courage, and reclaiming your narrative when the world tries to write it for you. It's about choosing truth, even when it's uncomfortable. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications to never miss the next story.